Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen. This is my favourite fighter, and I'm going to be talking about Prince Naseem Hamed, or Naz, as he's known to many of his fans around the world, of which I was one and still am, but very much so when I was a kid. I used to watch his fights on TV all the time, and just was captivated by everything about him, from the entrance, the brash kind of arrogance slash cockiness that he brought to proceedings. The flying carpet entrance, of course, the Thriller, Michael Jackson's Thriller, when he went over to New York. Here Comes the Hot Stepper, I remember that one well. Iron Kamosi, and that was one of his less kind of high profile fights, although every fight with Naz was high profile. I guess that's the thing. Back then, every match that he was in was an event. He transcended the sport in a way we wouldn't see from anyone else for a long time afterwards. And while his peak was relatively brief, it was certainly exciting. He was toying with world-class opposition very early in his career. I think he won the European bantamweight title against Vincenzo Belcastro really early on. And Belcastro was this Italian veteran, beaten Brits before, tough, cunning, clever fighter. And Naz just played with him, toyed with him, even mocked him at times, for which he got criticised. And I can understand why. It was a bit disrespectful, but it was just the exuberance of youth and the character he was. It was just in him. The rumour was, well, I say the rumour, I think this has been confirmed by him and by Brendan Ingle, both of whom I've spoken to, that Naz was first spotted fighting a number of boys who were bullying him in a school playground, and just showed potential even back then. And Brendan Ingle knew that he just needed to harness it. And he always predicted, Brendan, that Naz could go through the weights and win multiple world titles. Obviously, that didn't happen. And Naz will always go down as one of those people that, while a legend, and he's rightly in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, he didn't quite achieve his full potential based on how fast he moved early on. Really, really great fighter, used his natural reflexes, had great power, defensively superb early in his career. And common misconception is that he fought in a strange way, or an unorthodox way, right from the start, switch hit, and all of that stuff. But he knew the basics from the off. Once he started working at the Ingle gym with the likes of Harold Graham and people like that under Brendan Ingle, obviously he added nuances to his game and became a real box of tricks. But he, as an amateur, he was quite, early on, he was quite a standard type of fighter, just very, very good, very fast, very powerful, good footwork. So he mastered the basics before then turning them on their head, which I think is very important, because a lot of people that he's inspired down the years, kind of Naz clones, if you like, they forget that element of it, and they try and go straight to fifth gear, if you like, before learning the very fundamentals that Naz then revolutionised. But he was an incredible fighter. After Belcastro, he just went through the weights, obviously from super bantam to feather, quite quickly. He always had really big legs, which is where he generated his power from. But he stayed at featherweight for a long, long time, which, all the kind of cracks about his discipline and stuff, that took a certain level of commitment, even when his lifestyle wasn't as it should be, to stay at that weight. And I think it affected some of his performances late on as well. The night he beat Steve Robinson in Cardiff, hostile territory, but he shut the crowd up so quickly and just basically battered, beat up and bemused a long reigning and very talented champion in Robinson, who'd beaten the best British featherweights over the previous few years, the likes of Duke McKenzie and Paul Hodkinson. And it was a completely one-sided breaking down of a fighter, a humiliation really. And you could tell that Robinson, you felt sorry for him watching the fight, because although he didn't show his frustration too much, there was nothing he could do. And you could see that he was trying a number of different things and none of them were working. And it's not because of any fault on his part, just because Naz was a special kind of once in a generation talent. His use of angles, his reflexes, and just his sheer power in both hands, and from any angle, going forwards, going backwards. Some of the shots he threw, you just weren't meant to throw in the way that he did. They weren't meant to be effective. But not only did they prove accurate, they also proved potent. And he still remains one of the biggest, if not the biggest, punching featherweight of all time. He obviously won that WBO belt against Robinson and beat the various other champions. Never unified all the belts at the same time because of the sanctioning body, sometimes making opponents give up belts and so on. But he beat some of the best that were around at the time, Manuel Medina and Cesar Soto for the WBC belt, which was a horrible fight. I don't recommend you watch it, but he got the win regardless. Kevin Kelly, which was obviously an incredibly exciting fight. out in the US. Wayne McCulloch, not so exciting, but still beat a former world champion there. Paul Ingle, that was a thrilling fight. But the signs that he was kind of deteriorating were there long before he suffered his first and only career defeat to Marco Antonio Barrera, certainly in my view. He'd split from Dominic Ingle, and although he had people around him, good people like Emmanuel Stewart and Oscar Suarez, they never quite suited his style in the way that Ingle did, and they could never replicate the bond that he had with Ingle. And one of the greatest tragedies, in my view, of Naz's career and of Ingle's as well, is that before Brendan sadly passed away not too long ago, they never quite made it up. You know, Naz extended an olive branch and Brendan was maybe keen to do it towards the end, I'm not sure, but they never quite got it together, and it's a shame because they were so close for so long. And there's no question that the wheels came off Hamed's career once he was no longer involved with Ingle. He wasn't, and also once he reached the top, he was less committed. He enjoyed the trappings of success, it's fair to say. In retirement, he kind of avoided those trappings, or at least the glare of publicity. We saw him a lot less out and about. Obviously, he's put on a lot of weight, as I'm sure some people know. Some of the stuff he did with the World Boxing Super Series brought him to a whole new audience, how blunt he was in his analysis, which we all love. But we haven't really seen much of him. I remember interviewing him probably about 5 or 6 years ago now about his career. And I tried to do some research for it. Obviously not research on his career because I was a huge fan, but just what other people had written on him in the past so that I wouldn't replicate too much. And he'd hardly done any interviews about his career. Not long after we did that was for Boxing News, he actually paid a visit to the Boxing News office. And it was amazing because a lot of the people in there, Boxing News was owned then by NewsQuest, which owns a lot of other business-to-business publications. It's not just a consumer publisher. So a lot of people working there weren't really boxing fans, certainly not of the demographic that would know instantly who Naz was. And he created this aura, this presence when he came in, that everyone was flocking around him, wanting to get pictures with him, talk to him. Even those who needed to be educated on exactly who he was. He just had a clear kind of cult of personality, to quote Living Colour, I suppose. You know, he was magnetic and people wanted to be around him. And the personality, the braggadocio, the sheer kind of exuberance is still there, or it was when I last spoke to him. And I think his greatest legacy is how many people he inspired to get into the sport. How many young boxers turned on the TV and saw this guy with the crazy shorts and the, you know, style full of flair and trickery, and decided, yeah, I want to be him. I want to do that. And yeah, that sparks its, you know, fair share of clones. Fair enough. But it's also brought along a lot of really, really good fighters, not least the likes of Kell Brook and Kid Galahad, who now train in the Ingle Gym. And Galahad especially was inspired to go to the Ingle Gym by Naz himself, and they ended up bumping into each other at mosque at one point. So his legacy lives on. And if you've never seen him fight, I strongly recommend you go and watch some of his early fights. Belcastro, Robinson, Cabrera, Liendo, the guys he fought on the way up just before he won the world title, and his early defences of that belt as well, to see Naz at his most exciting best. Trust me, you won't regret it. Spend a day, you know, find a compilation, best Naz fights, best Naz knockouts. While this shutdown's going on, it's probably the very best time to do it as well. But yeah, that's me. Talk about my favourite fighter. Everyone else was getting in on the act, and I didn't want to miss out. Just in case no one else mentioned Naz, I didn't want him to be disregarded. So appreciate that, and see you soon.